This week in the cosmos, we're served lessons around listening to ourselves, to the world, to the past. And this is the 13th key with the shadow of discord. And discord is all about the secrets, the great secrets that we are unwilling to listen to. And these are open secrets, secrets of love and wisdom and surrender, secrets that masters have shared with us for almost as far back as we can remember. All we have to do is choose to listen. But there is just too much noise and we have too much armor. And what we think to ourselves is, how can so many people be wrong and just a few, myself, be right? And it's because the masses don't hear. What they do hear is this whisper that magic isn't real, this whisper that you need to keep everything for yourself, this whisper that you're not enough. The world isn't fair. The real world is based around worry. That is what the collective would have you believe. That is what we're choosing to hear. Every generation looks back and thinks the past had it better. When I was a kid, it was so much better. And that is the 13th shadow of discord. Discord tunes into the vibration of chaos. It chooses to see the bad news. It chooses to turn on CNN or Fox News and hear everything that is going wrong, because we believe what we are being told until that magical moment that we don't. The 13th was known in the I Ching as the Fellowship of Man, and it brings us around the campfire to listen to one another. But we don't listen. We just distrust. We hear, but we do not believe. Even science pulls us into this shadow with its theory of entropy, that all life moves from order to disorder. Talk about a sad way of seeing the world. We just haven't put those pieces together yet. And if you're deaf enough, you'll hear what they're saying. And if you're gullible enough, you'll believe what they're saying too. Discord only hears the heavy. It's emotional hearing. It's hearing with the chatter that's running around in the back of your brain instead of hearing what is actually being said. You're hearing everything through your lens instead of listening to the world that is right in front of you. And because of that, you cannot hear love. Hearing and listening are two totally different things. Hearing is me paying attention to the words that you are saying. Listening is taking in your aura, taking in the space between the words. The 7th shadow here, the programming partner, is the shadow of division. And that's what happens when we can't listen, but we only hear. The 7th shadow pulls us forward, whereas the 13th allows us to learn and listen from the past. Discord can't listen to the past though. It hears only what it wants to hear. This is part of the ring of purification. And the reason that we can't listen to the past is because of our desire nature. We can only hear those desires. We can't hear the truth. We hear the discord we create, but we won't listen to it. We can look around and we can hear the earth screaming to us for what we're doing. But we refuse to listen because our desires outweigh what we're hearing. And when you do not listen, that is what leads to the 7th shadow of division. Moving on to the 13th gift of discernment. Discernment is how we rebuild the fellowship of man. It's how we tune in to love. Discernment is about listening, but it's mainly about listening inwardly, listening to your body, to your chemistry, and to your heart. This is the only teaching that thousands of teachers and hundreds of thousands of years have brought forward. Listen to your heart. But we choose to hear something else. We are a fellowship when we listen. Think of places like the US or the EU, which granted certainly are struggling right now, but at least When you look back a few hundred years, there weren't even groups sitting down to try and listen to one another. Discernment comes from the heart and from the mind, but the heart has to come first. And when I say heart, I don't mean emotions here. I mean stillness. When you listen from your heart, you are listening from this place of clarity, from this place of excitement, not from this place. A lot of times we think of heart listening as emotional listening. And emotional listening is hearing words, but formulating your response in your head so that you can get out what you're feeling. We need to learn how to discern our opinions from the opinion of others. We have to learn to listen from the heart. We have to learn to listen to the pauses, the space between the words. We listen to the evolutionary impulse that is hidden in our higher purpose and in their higher purpose. And when we listen through that lens, through that person's higher purpose, they can feel it. And we make this connection. We have this sympathy and eventually empathy. When you listen from your heart, hope is all around you. It is this optimistic feeling. And it is the only way to listen when your frequency reaches a certain point. We hold this high frequency and it allows us to hear the truth. Heart listening brings us into resonance with another. It brings us into sympathy with another. It turns us into a receiving dish for the higher frequencies that we can then amplify and through our aura allow the other to be heard and to also hear what be reflections of what they're saying to us. The more you listen, the more that you will hear only love. Discernment comes online when you notice how your emotions affect what you hear. So when you're angry, the way that you perceive something can be a lot different than if you're happy. And when you recognize that, you realize that you haven't been listening. You've been hearing. And once you can separate from that hearing, once you can separate from that lens, you step into mythology. You step into the teachings of karma and rebirth and justice, which must be mythology because there are no words at the cities. All of that disappears. And I'm not saying that those things aren't true. What I'm saying is that they are mythic, which allows us to follow a bigger story. And that takes us into the 13th city, which is empathy. And empathy is all about digestion. It's all about listening with your belly. If you think about what your intestines do, they take in the world, they soak in the nutrients, and they dispose of the waste. That is what listening is all about. 13 is a master number. This is the 13th gene key. Arachne is the 13th sign of the zodiac, who sits in the center and through her 8 legs listens to the whole universe. However, through our 13th shadow of discord, what we think of as 13 is this fear, this pessimism of being left out and not being able to hear. 13 leads to being unlucky. It leads to death. The 13th tarot card is the death card. But the universe is a 12-fold system with a 13th center point with all 12 coming around it. 13 is the Christ number. The prefix sim means to be with someone. The prefix M means to be within them, meaning empathy is going into true fellowship. It is merging with another being. When Christ said, love thy neighbor as thyself, what he was really saying was, know thy neighbor as thyself. They are you. All we are is just this simple presence that is listening to itself. Again, this is the ring of purification. And what empathy allows us to do is merge with another. And in that merging, we release our suffering. The Gayatri mantra is what Richard Rudd, the founder of the Gene Keys, talks about in the 13th audio. If you're not familiar, that's an ancient mantra from the Vedas, and it's Om Bhuva Svaha Tat Savitor Varenyam Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prachodayat. And essentially what that means is one who listens inwardly and relaxedly feels the suffering of the world and transmutes it by inner light, which illuminates our being and the world with truth. And that is what the 13th city is all about. Empathy is simply remembering the greatest secret that exists, the secret of union, the secret that we are one. And because we are one, the cities give us superpowers. We can feel what it is like. We can become a mollusk. We can become a rose and know that experience through this city. This key programs our future by listening to the past. The 7th city programs the past by how we remember it in the present. And empathy is a dissolution of self. It is becoming the other. Remember, the 13th tarot card is the death card, but it is not death as you typically would think of it. It's death of our individual self, death of our ego that allows us to merge with everything in the universe. And a deep, deep listening is one of the most cleansing, most beautiful yin forces that exist. And that's why so many gurus, so many masters have people flocking to them just to sit in their presence. Because that sitting in their presence makes you feel heard. That guru is listening. And that brings all the things that are inside of you out to be heard. And that is purification. That is the power of merging. That is the power of empathy. And that is the power of listening.